Bless your name. We give you thanks. Lift up your voice and give God thanks this evening. Give him thanks. Bless the name of the Lord. He has brought us to his presence once more. Father, we celebrate you. We lift your name on high. We bless you. Is somebody giving God thanks? Give him thanks, because in his presence there is fullness of joy, and at his right hand there are pleasures forevermore. Give God thanks. Bless the name of the Lord. Bless him. Is somebody blessing him? Give him thanks from the depth of your heart. Give him thanks because of his goodness. Father, we are here to thank you. We bless your name. Give him thanks. This is the last midweek service of 2016. Father, we thank you. We bless your name. We thank you for keeping us. We thank you for causing us to approach your presence all to 2016. Father, we thank you. Thank you for all the word encounters. Thank you for all the change of levels. Father, we celebrate you. Thank you for the breaking forth of light. Thank you for enlarging our coast. We lift up our hands to you and we bless your name. Father, we give you praise. Is somebody giving him thanks? Give him thanks. Give him thanks. Give him thanks, because better is the end of the matter than the beginning. Father, we give you praise because you have prepared for us a great feast on this last midweek service of 2016. We celebrate you. Begin to express your expectation. Father, we thank you because you have caused us to approach, to change our level, to strengthen us, to give us turnaround, to give us breakthroughs, Lord, to change our spiritual authority. Father, we give you praise because of what will happen this evening. Thank you because of the impact of your word. Thank you because of the communion table. Thank you because we shall be empowered. Thank you because we shall be enlarged. Father, we thank you because you are prepared for us in every aspect of this service. Different levels, feast of a great feast for our turnaround. Father, we thank you because everyone is going on change. Everyone is going on with his breakthroughs. Everyone is going on with his deliverance. Father, we celebrate you because our word is coming to us. We thank you. Holy Spirit, we welcome you. We welcome you into this place. We welcome you. In the name of Jesus, we have prayed. We know God has never left himself without a witness. So you have your testimonies. Please just go down. The pastors are there. Record them and you'll be given an opportunity to share. Let's make welcome the praise team.
You are the God of heaven and the earth. Kabiosio, Kabiosi, Kabiosio, Kabiosio. Oh, you are the God. You are the God of heaven and the earth. Kabiosio, hey, Kabiosio. We worship you, Jesus. Oh, you are the God of heaven and the earth. Kabio, Kabio, Kabio. Oh, lift your hands, lift your voice, Kabio, there is no one like you, Jehovah. You are the God of heaven and the earth. Put those hands together for Jesus is worthy. Hallelujah. Praise God, He's faithful. Your hands, He's worthy. Higher, 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 higher. Lift Jesus higher, higher. His water. Lift Jesus higher. Hey, higher, 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 higher. Lift up Jesus higher. Somebody worship Him. He deserves a praise. Oh, higher, 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 higher. Lift up Jesus higher. His word. Oh, higher, higher, higher. Lift Him high. Lift up Jesus. Higher, 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 higher. Higher, higher, higher. He's worthy of praise. Hey, somebody lift Him higher, higher. From the beginning of the year up to this day, He's faithful. Oh, lift up Jesus higher. Oh, higher, oh, higher. Lift up Jesus. Somebody lift Him higher. His word, He deserves a praise. He's ever faithful. He said it and He did it. Lift Him higher. Lift Him higher. Lift Him higher. Lift your Maker higher. Lift Jesus higher. Higher, higher, yeah. Oh, lift up Jesus high. His word. Yeah. Oh, higher, higher, yeah. His worthy of praise. High, high. Lift up Jesus higher. Higher. His word. Hallelujah. Oh, you are good and your mercy is forever.
Hallelujah.
Hey, you are good and your mercy is forever.
Hallelujah.
You are good and your mercy is eternal.
Hallelujah.
We praise you, Jehovah. Hey, you are good and your mercy is forever. You are good, your message remains the same.
Hallelujah.
Oh yes, hallelujah. Jehovah, you are good and your message forever.
Hallelujah.
Oh, you are good, you are good, you are good, you are good, you are so good, you are good, faithful God, you are good, 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 you are so good, wonder God, faithful God, you are good, Imela, 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 Imela. Hallelujah. Oh, you are good and your mercy is forever. You are good and your mercy is forever. You are good and your mercy is eternal. are so good. You are good. You are good. You are good. Imela. 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 Who I say? 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 How my Jesus say? Somebody else, Jehovah. Hey! Somebody lift your hands. Hail Jehovah. Somebody hail my Jesus. He has brought you thus far. He has made you sit today. Hail my Jesus. Somebody lift your voice. Hail Jehovah. Somebody hail my Jesus. Hail my Jesus. He deserves a praise. Hail Jehovah. Oh, somebody hail my Jesus.
My case is different. Let the Redeemer of the Lord say so. Put your hands together for Jesus, and you may please be seated. Shortly this evening, we shall be upstanding to lift up our voice of thanksgiving unto heaven. We shall be saying, Father, thank you for the great multitude you gathered into our Christmas celebration services of last Sunday, and for the impact of the word on all worshippers, resulting in diverse turn-around texts. Psalm 115 verse 1, he said, not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but unto thy name we give glory, for thy mercy and thy truth's sake. With this understanding in our heart, let's be upstanding this evening, lifting up our voice of thanksgiving unto heaven, saying, Father, thank you for the great multitude you gathered into our Christmas celebration services last Sunday, and for the impact of the word on all worshippers, resulting in diverse turn-around testimonies. Father, we thank you for the great multitude you gathered into our Christmas celebration services last Sunday, and for the impact of the word on all worshippers, the impact of conviction, the impact of conversion, the impact of establishment. Father, we thank you. We appreciate you. You gathered the multitude, men and women, young and old. You gathered them on last Sunday services. We celebrate you. The first service, the second service, the third service, we celebrate you. We give you all the praise. No man can come except the Lord draw it. Father, we thank you. The multitude you drew last Sunday, we celebrate you from the depth of our heart. We say thank you. Celebrate him tonight. Appreciate him. Give him all the glory. Give him all the praise. Father, we thank you on the behalf of Faith Tabernacle. We have returned in gratitude. We have returned in appreciation. We have returned in thanksgiving. Father, our heart is full of gratitude. Our heart is full of appreciation. We thank you from the depth of our heart. We appreciate you, the multitude. You gathered into our Christmas celebration services last Sunday. We appreciate you. We give you all the glory for the impact of your word era testimonies. We celebrate you for the mercy, salvation of souls. We appreciate you. You confirm your word. We celebrate you. You gathered the multitude. You brought them from far and near. Jesus, 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 we appreciate you. We give you all the glory, not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, O Lord, but unto thy name. We give glory for the mercy and the true side. We saw your finger, we saw your hand, we saw your stretcher in the midst of your people. We celebrate you. We have come today to return the glory that is due unto you, not unto us, Jesus. We celebrate you. You brought your people. You gathered the multitude. You saved them. You convicted them. You converted them. You even established them. Jesus, we appreciate you for diverse turnaround testimonies in the midst of your people. Jesus, we appreciate you. We thank you for the great multitude you gather. Jesus, we appreciate you and for the impact of your word resulting into diverse turnaround testimonies. Jesus, we appreciate you. We give you all the glory. Celebrate him. Appreciate him. Give him all the glory. In Jesus' great name, we are giving thanks. Please, you may be seated.
My case is different. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. We shall here be thanking God, saying, Father, thank you for the massive salvation of souls through our various outreaches this year and for the attendant testimonies among your people. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 3b, he said, no one can say Jesus is Lord except by the Holy Ghost. Let's rise up to our feet and raise our voices and pray and appreciate him. Let's appreciate him and exalt his holy name. Father, we thank you. Thank you for the massive salvation of souls through our various outreaches this year and for the attendant testimonies among your people. We celebrate you, we appreciate you, we honor you, we adore you, we magnify your holy name, we are grateful. We thank you, Father, we thank you for the massive salvation of souls through our various outreaches this year, 2016. The attendant testimonies among your people. Father, we have seen your good hand. We have returned to say thank you. We have returned to bless your holy name. We exalt your holy name. We honor you. We adore you. We magnify your majesty. We thank you, Lord, for the massive salvation of souls through our various outreaches all through the year and for the attendant testimonies among your people. Father, be thou exalted and glorified. Be thou exalted and magnified. We celebrate you. We are grateful. We have returned to say thank you. We have returned to bless your holy name. We have returned to return all the glory unto you. Father, we thank you. We bless your holy name for the massive salvation of souls through our various outreaches this year and for the attendant testimonies among your people. Be thou exalted, O Lord. Be thou exalted, O Lord. Be thou glorified, King of glory. Be thou magnified, Lord of lords. We bless your holy name. We exalt your holy name. We appreciate you, we honor you, we adore you, we magnify your majesty. We thank you, King of glory. We thank you, Lord of lords. We recognize that no one comes to you except drawn by yourself. Father, we magnify your holy name. We give you all the glory. We give you all the praise. We thank you, Lord, for the massive salvation of souls all through our various outreaches this year. We give you praise, oh Lord. We bless your holy name. We thank you for the attendant testimonies among your people. You have done wondrously in our midst. We give you all the praise. We give you all the glory. We celebrate you. We magnify your majesty. We honor you. We adore you. We magnify your holy name. Thank you, King of glory. Is someone thanking him? Thank him from the depth of your heart. He has done us well. He has done all things well. well. Father, we give you all the glory. We bless your holy name. We appreciate you. We thank you for the massive salvation of souls in all our outreaches, all through the year. We thank you for the attendant testimonies in the life. Father, we exalt your holy name. We honor you. We adore you. We have seen what only you can do. Father, we give you all the glory. We give you all the praise. We bless your holy name. We celebrate your faithfulness. We magnify your holy name. We are indeed grateful. We are indeed grateful. As a people, we have returned this hour to say thank you. We have returned this hour to give you all the glory. We have returned this hour to magnify your holy name. We are indeed grateful. Be thou exalted, O Lord. We be thou magnified, O Lord. We thank you, King of Kings. We thank you, Lord of Lords. We magnify your holy name. We celebrate your faithfulness. Thank you, everlasting Father. Blessed be the holy name. Let's begin to thank him in the Holy Ghost. Begin to pray in tongues right now. Begin to thank him in his spirit, because we do well by doing so. Rina no sata abla gedu gedi abala brade rigado sontalia gada manade yalata e genegerede e brada bosila koti ala pali abrede Rina no sinda a papa ridado e brade bolibra gazande e gene bruna no siele poli ebridade a baba radaba a rigado sintalia gada bridado e Rina no sinda agle ketule pele pregede e pregede prina mo siele poli ebrigado yanta a gagagudi Rina mo siele po embrada bolibra gezele kesunda a gigi gedor jalapa a baranama e brado sitalia brade e gragosie gele pregezonda e. Thank you, everlasting Father. Blessed be the holy name. In Jesus' mighty name, we have given thanks. You may be comfortably seated.
My case is different. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Shortly, you are rising up again to give God thanks, saying, Father, thank you for sustaining this growth that you have brought our way since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. Taking our bearing from Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 14, the scripture says, I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken away from him. God does this that men may fear before him. Please, let's rise up on our feet together. Let's give him quality thanks. Father, thank you for sustaining the supernatural growth that you have brought our way since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. Almighty God, we give you thanks for sustaining the supernatural growth that you have brought our way since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. Lord, we return the glory to you. Father, we return the glory to you. Almighty God, we have returned like that one leper to appreciate your mighty hand that has sustained the supernatural growth that you have brought our way as a church since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. Lord, we magnify your name. Jesus, we glorify you, Lord. Father, we say thank you. Father, we say thank you for sustaining the supernatural growth that you have brought our way since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. Almighty God, receive our thanks this evening in the name of Jesus Christ. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for sustaining the supernatural growth that you have brought our way since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. Almighty God, we are grateful. Father, we are grateful. Lord, we are grateful. It was not our prayer. It was not our outreaches. It was not our plan. It was not anything that came from us, but your mighty hand. Only your hand has brought the supernatural growth. Only your hand has been sustaining it since you brought the supernatural growth our way, since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. We return the glory to you in the name of Jesus Christ. Give him thanks this evening. Let the Lord hear your voice of thanksgiving. Let the Lord hear your voice of thanksgiving. Thank him for the sustenance of the supernatural growth that we have witnessed as a church since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. Lord, we say thank you. Father, we say thank you. Father, we say thank you. Lord God of heaven, we give you praise. We give you praise. Thank him with all of your heart this day. Give him thanks. Give him thanks. Give him thanks. Give him thanks. The God of wonder double that has come to tabernacle with us. His presence in our midst has commanded the attention of all, bringing in unprecedented multitude into our midst. Father, Lord, we give you praise. Jesus, we give you praise. Are you thanking him? Is the Lord hearing your voice? For everyone that has come by the hand of the Lord. That for everyone that has stayed by the hand of the Lord. Father, Lord, be thou exalted. We give you praise for sustaining the supernatural growth that you have brought our way since the wonder double prophetic agenda began. Lord, we are grateful. Lord, we are grateful. Lord, we are grateful. Only your hand could have done what we have witnessed as a people. We return the glory to you today. We return the glory to you today. Drive it home in the language of the Spirit. Lord, we give you thanks. Father, we magnify your name. Thank you, Almighty God. Thank you, Almighty God. Lift up your hands to him and give him thanks today. Wave your hand to him. Father, we give you praise. In Jesus' great name, we have given thanks. You may please be seated.
My case is different. Let the Lord say so. It is announcement time. Please listen to this announcement. Number one, Covenant Hour of Prayer continues tomorrow, Thursday to Sunday. Time is 5:30 to 6:30 a.m. Number two, good news. 3 intending couples wed this weekend. We are admonished to stand in the gap for them in prayers and share in the joy. Time is 11 a.m. Number 3, all Shiloh 2016 messages are available in MP3 and DVD format. All Shiloh 2016 messages are available in MP3 and DVD format. Please pick your copies from the Dominion bookstores and release the counters for your supernatural exemption. Number 4, good news. The crossover celebration night holds this Saturday, 31st December 2016. Come with your written expectation. Time is 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. To this end, there will be no WSF this Saturday, the 31st of December, and morning service this Sunday, the 1st of January 2017. And because of that also, there will not be covenant prayer on Saturday. Praise the Lord. Now it is testimony time. Please listen to the following written testimonies and be blessed. Number 1, Shiloh 2016 miracle job. I was without a job from August 2016. Even though I passed a number of job interviews, I was never given the jobs. Breaking this yoke of stagnation became one of my Shiloh 2016 expectations. After an impactful first day at Shiloh 2016, I got my miracle job on December 7, 2016. Give God a big hand for that. And received the letter for appointment of employment on December 21st, 2016. God has once again confirmed Shiloh as a divine mandate. Give God a big hand. My case is indeed different. I give God all the glory for terminating the shame of joblessness in my life via the prophetic instructions at Shiloh 2016. This is from Adebowale Ade. Number 2, our case is different. We joined this wonderful act of God in March 6, 2003. And God has consistently turned our destinies around. Give God a big hand. Presently, we are outside the country, but I watch all services daily online. Covenant Hour of Prayer, Midweek services, services, Sunday services, and most recently, Shiloh 2016. I sat through all the sessions morning and evening during Shiloh. I kept all the words spoken in my heart, being assured that our case is different. On Monday, December 19th, I was visited by an insurance agent, and on Tuesday night, I got a strong urge to pay my December tithe unfailingly on Wednesday the 21st, which was the weekly communion service. I called a staff in Nigeria to drop it on my behalf. It was 20,000 naira. That same day, a debtor paid me 20,000 naira cash. Give God a big hand. And staff salaries and Christmas bonuses were pending. However, the responses from the insurance agent arrived on 23rd December. The package is a support package for those that are taking care of a family member at home. I was expecting a monthly payment of 18 euros. Lo and behold, I was given a monthly package of 1,000 euros till 2020. Give God a big hand. And it was backdated to September 2016 with the first installment paid. Give God a big hand. The truth is, it is unusual. It pays to put God first. He gave us a most unlikely Christmas present. The God of Shiloh has proved it again. When others are saying recession, our case is different. Give God a big hand. This is from Adebiyi Oluwatoyi, Germany. Let's give God a big hand. It's a good God.
My case is different, and let the redeemer of the Lord say so. Shortly, we're going to be rising up on our feet to pray this prayer, saying, Father, thank you for protecting the apostle over this commission, the entire pastorate, and their families in all their going out and coming in this year. In Psalm chapter 105 and verse 13 and 2 to 15, he said, when they went from one nation to another, from one people to another kingdom, he suffered no man to do them wrong. He said, yea, he reproves kings for their sake, saying, touch not my anointed, and do my prophets no harm. Please join me tonight with faith in your heart. We are giving God thanks, saying, Father, thank you for protecting the apostle over this commission, the entire pastorate and their families in all they are going out and coming in this year. Lift up your voice and pray this prayer of thanksgiving, appreciating God for protection over the apostle, over this commission, the entire pastorate and their family members in all they are going out and they are coming in. Lift up your hand, lift up your voice and appreciate him. Father, we have come tonight to return all the glory back to you for your protection over the apostle, over this commission, the entire pastorate and their family members in all they are going out and they are coming in. It is your doing and it is marvelous in our eyes. Lift up your voice. Let God hear your voice of appreciation tonight. Father, we have come like that one leper to return all the glory back to you for your protection, all-round protection over the apostle, over this commission, the entire pastorate and their family members. Oh, you protected them. On the air, we saw your hand of protection. On the road, we saw your mighty presence evident. Oh, Lord, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Is somebody truly thanking God tonight? God must hear your voice of appreciation. Lord, we have come to return all the glory back to you for your protection over the apostle, over this commission, the entire pastorate and their family members. You have protected their going out and their coming in. all throughout the year. And that's why we have come tonight to return all the glory back to you, to return all the honor back to you. He said the horse is prepared for the day of battle. He said safety is of the Lord. Lord, you are the one that protected the apostle over this commission and his family members and the entire pastorate. Lord, we have come to return all the glory back to you. Somebody is thanking him from the depth of his heart right now. Lift up your voice. Appreciate him. Appreciate him. Father, tonight we are saying thank you for protecting the apostle over this commission, the entire pastorate and their families in all their going out and their coming in. Lord, we have come to return all the glory back to you, Lord. Not unto us, oh God, not unto us, but unto your name. We give you glory. We give you thanks. Thank you for sending your angels to encamp around about all the pastorate in this commission. We have come tonight to return all the glory back to you over your servant and his family members. Lord, we have come to say thank you. We have come to say thank you. Somebody is thanking God aloud right now. Thank him loudly. Thank him boldly. Masatola protangadeaba. Ye logam brodaya. Nekotola boziaba. Le kotanda keliando sotayaba. Eluso kendiaba. Le koya. Thank him in the language of the Holy Ghost. Thank him. God must, by all means, hear your voice of thanksgiving tonight. Father, we thank you. Lord, 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 we thank you for your protection over the apostle under this commission, even God's servant, and his family members, the pastorate and their family members. We have come tonight to return all the glory back to you. Thank him, thank him, thank him. Thank him from the depth of your heart. Thank him. Appreciate him. Thank him right now in the language of the Holy Ghost. Nakotambrudi, Gezuzo, Abrota, Leketialo, Eloka, Brada, Kedeaba, Ando Sotali Brada, Eketonta Kaliaba, Mosada, Endala, Lekotaliaba. On the air, you protected him. You protected the pastorate and their family members. Lord, on the sea, on the road, we saw your visible hand of protection. Thank you for sending your angels round about everyone. Lord, we give you praise. Lord, we give you honor. Lord, we thank you. Lord, we thank you. From the depth of our heart, we have come to say thank you. We have come to say thank you. Lord, we give you praise. Lord, we give you honor. Lord, we magnify your name. Lord, we glorify your name. Take all the glory tonight. Take all the honor tonight for your hand of protection over the commission, the apostle over this commission, the pastorate, the family members. Lord, we say thank you. 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 Lift up your two hands. Begin to wave it. Appreciate God again. Appreciate him. Lord, we give you praise. Lord, we give you honor. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we have given thanks. Please be seated.
My case is different. Let the Redeemer of the Lord say so. In a short while, be rising on our feet to pray, saying, Father, thank you for the diverse, amazing testimonies of turnarounds and breakthroughs in the Winners family all through this year. In Psalms 126, verse 1 and 2, it says, when the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion, we led them that dream. Then said they among the hidden, the Lord that done great things for them. Without understanding, rise on your feet and let's begin to appreciate the God of this commission. Say, Father, thank you for the diverse, amazing testimonies of turnaround and breakthroughs in the winner's family all through this year. Is somebody grateful to God? Let's lift our voice and give him all the glory this hour. Father, we are thankful for diverse, amazing testimonies of turnaround and breakthroughs in the winner's family all through this year. We have had amazing testimonies of turnaround and breakthroughs in the winner's family this year. Let's return the glory back to the doer tonight. We acknowledge you, Jesus, as a hand, as a one behind the amazing, diverse testimony of turnaround and breakthroughs in the winner's family this year. Therefore, we've returned like that one leper, lifting up our voice, giving glory to you, saying, Father, take all the praise, take all the glory, take all the adoration for the diverse, amazing testimonies of turnaround and breakthroughs in the winner's family all through this year. We give you praise, we give you glory. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. The barren have carried their children. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. The jobless have miracle jobs. We give you praise. We give you glory. The singles located their life partner. They are joyfully married. We give you glory. Curses and generational hereditary have been broken. Those that lack direction have direction. We give you praise. Career breakthroughs, liftings of all kinds, of all manners. Oh God of this commission, tonight we acknowledge you as a doer. We have returned to say thank you. So say thank you for the diverse, amazing testimonies of turnaround and breakthroughs in the winner's family all through this year. Take all the glory, take all the honor. We give you praise, Lord. We give you glory. Thank you, Lord, for the sanctification of sinners. Those that are hard in his sin, we are purified by your mighty hand. And this hour, oh God, we've returned, acknowledging you as the doer. Blessed be your name, oh God. Blessed be your name, oh God. We thank you. The winner's family worldwide, since the beginning of the year to this day, have witnessed all manner of amazing breakthroughs, of testimonies, of breakthroughs in turnaround. And this hour, we have returned to say thank you, hallelujah, to the God of this commission that have not left himself without a witness, confirming his word again and again, proving himself again and again in the midst of his people. We've returned, hallelujah, we glorify your mighty name. Blessed be your name, Jesus. Blessed be your name, Jesus. We acknowledge you as a doer. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. We are witnesses to the amazing, diverse turnaround testimonies, to the amazing, diverse breakthrough turnaround testimony that we have wrought in the winner's family. And this hour, we have come to say thank you. What a good God, what amazing God, what a great God, what an awesome God. We give you praise, we give you glory. There is no one like you. We acknowledge you as a doer. Blessed be your name, O God. Blessed be your name, O God, for confirming again and again that you are the God of this commission. We thank you, Lord. We thank you, Lord. Le katozia, eriakato madaria, le yeketeza, eriakatalaba, makompazozia. Who can do this mighty works except you? And this hour, we return the glory back to you. Take all the glory, take all the honor, take all the adoration. You alone are the doer. You alone are the doer. We are grateful to you. Le katozia, eriakatalaba, makompatozia, eriakatazaza, eriakata, makompukutuza, le yekete, for every single diverse amazing testimony of turnaround and breakthrough. We say thank you. We say thank you. Blessed be your name. Thank you, gracious Father. In Jesus' precious name, we have given thanks. Please have your seat.
My case is different. Let the Redeemer of the Lord say so. We shall yet be rising up shortly to say this prayer. Father, in the name of Jesus, let your presence be made manifest at the crossover celebration night in Canaan land and all our viewing centers around the world. Say amen. As you confirm our covenant of exemption for the year 2017. Galatians chapter 6 verse 17 says, henceforth, let no man trouble me, for I bear in my body the marks of the Lord Jesus. Shall we rise on our feet as we say this prayer? Father, in the name of Jesus, let your presence be made manifest as the crossover celebration night, both here in Canaan land and all viewing centers across the nations of the world, as you confirm our covenants of exemption for the year 2017. In the name of Jesus, lift your voice and pray. Mazeko shada poza kata, maliza koshize kota. Our Father, in the name of Jesus, let your presence be made manifest as a crossover celebration night in diverse signs and wonders, both here in Canaan land and all viewing centers around the world, as you confirm our covenants of exemption for the year 2017. In the name of Jesus, we pray, our Father, for your manifest presence in all viewing centers around the world, in Canaan land, as you confirm our covenants of exemption for the year 2017. Let your presence be tangible. Let your presence be made manifest in the name of Jesus. Maseko shapo zakata, Eliza kozikete, Malampradaba, Maliza, Eko Shazaza, Maliko Zekete. Father, in the name of Jesus, let your presence be made manifest at the crossover celebration night in Canaan land and in all our viewing centers around the world, as you confirm our covenant of exemption for the year 2017. In the name of Jesus, is somebody praying? Masekosha, Empla Barabalaba, Mazeko Zekete, Elizaza, Malibaya, Enkoshanda Pozikete, Erakalaba, Malizakata, Ekopashe Kozakata. Our Father, our eyes are on you tonight, and we pray in the name of Jesus for your tangible presence, for your manifest presence at the crossover night, at the crossover celebration night. Let it be, oh Lord, here in Canaan land and all the viewing centers around the nations of the world, as you confirm our covenant of exemption for the year 2017. In the name of Jesus, Malezuza, Enka Posha Zekete, Erupa Zekota, Malazakata. Father, in the name of Jesus, let your presence be made manifest as the crossover celebration night in Canaan land and all the viewing centers around the world, as you confirm our covenants of exemption for the year 2017. In the name of Jesus, Malezo Kasha, Ekopa Zekete, Mariza Kota, Malezuza, Ekopa Sheko Zakata. Your presence shall be made manifest, oh Lord, as the crossover celebration night, as you confirm our covenants of exemption for the year 2017. In the name of Jesus, you can pray in the Holy Ghost, pray in the Holy Spirit. Malezuza, Ekaposankata Posha, Eliza Zaza, Malezukata, Enkaposha, Maliza, Malezuza, Enkaposha Zakata, Eliza Kata, Mashezikate, Enkalaba. Your presence shall be made manifest. There shall be diverse signs and wonders. There shall be salvation of souls. There shall be healings at the crossover celebration night in Canaan land and across the nations of the world, where it shall be viewed, as you confirm your covenant of exemption with us for the year 2017. Malezukata, Enkashezize. Father, we thank you. Lift your hands in appreciating. Glory be to your name, Lord. In Jesus' name we have prayed. Please be seated.
My case is different, and let the redeemed of the Lord say so. At this moment, we'll be rising up to pray for ourselves. Being reminded of God's word in Ezekiel chapter 21 and verse 27. He said, I will overturn it, and it shall be
no more until he comes whose right it is, and I will give it to him. In the book of James chapter 1 and verse 17, he said, every good and perfect gift cometh from above. At the end of the year, he will crown it with his goodness, and his parts will drop fatness. It's never too late for your testimony to be delivered. Therefore, you'll be rising up on your feet, and you will be left alone like Jacob was left alone until your story is overturned. Please rise on your feet. As you lift up your voices, you are praying for yourself. Every area of concern should be lifted up before the Lord. 3 days or so to the end of the year. It's never too late for that situation, for that challenge to be overturned. If I were you, I will face my God and cry out to him. Jacob said, I will not let you go until you bless me. This is the final midweek service of the year 2016. Our God is an overturner. No good thing will he withhold from you and I. Lift up your voices, everything or area of concern. This is the time to table it before the Lord. Every prophecy spoken in your direction. This is the time to remind the Lord, you must war a good warfare at this time. If I were you, I'll lift up my voices. I will not be distracted. I will not look around. I'm focusing on him. They looked unto him. They were lighting. Their faces were not ashamed. Oh God, you are the overturner. Overturn this situation. Overturn that situation. List it, number it one by one, and they will hear you this night. Lift your voices right now as you pray. For a brand new fire erupting in my soul. Do it, Lord. Do it, Lord. Do it, Lord. The same way I see it in your soul. A brand new fire burning in my soul. Do it, Lord. Do it, Lord. You are the overturner. You can overturn my current level. Moving to the knee, to the noise, to a that can never be passed over. Jesus, that's my cry tonight. That I may know you and the power of your resurrection and the fellowship of your suffering be made conformable to his name. Jesus, there must be an eternal change of level, depths of insight, depths of revelation, feelable authority, touchable authority. Lift your voices, make sure God is hearing you. God is never too late. He's here tonight to hear the cry of your heart. Raise your voices to the heavens. He said unto you, the answer to prayer shall all flesh come. We have gathered to the prayer answering God, not a prayer storing God. Like Paul the apostle, I want another dimension of feeling, touchable authority, undeniable authority. Jesus is available. I am tired of this current level. Lord, I am here on this ground. Step into the place where your indomitable force of authority operates from. This is the force of God. Without a force, Jesus is it will show I am still Make sure you are praying. We have about 2 minutes left. Lord, it must take place. It must happen tonight. This is a ground where God has proven again and again that prayers are answered. My own must be answered tonight. Lift your voices to the heaven. It must be answered. Jesus. Another realm of feelable, touchable authority.
You said it shall be a spiritually buoyant year for me, which means there are realms that I'm yet to touch, that I'm yet to experience, that I'm yet to handle. And Lord, tonight, I must step out from where I am and step in. I must step out from where I am and step into another dimension. I must step out from where I am and step into another dimension in the name of Jesus. Laroshkata gradekota gradizos here. Erushkata rekete galadish. Abradekota gratekota. Zezuzia. Begin to round up your prayer.
Offering time, say confidently, so shall it be for you. If you haven't done so, please properly package your worship seed for this service and label it properly. And let us get set to worship God with our seed. As you do so, please remember what God's word says to us in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. The Bible says, honor the Lord with your substance and with the first fruit of all that increase. One major way we honor God is through our giving. And so why do we give every time we gather? Because we are commanded to do so. And as you obey God's commands, I see him change your level financially. Why has God commanded also? Is it because God is in need? No, never. In verse 10, the Bible makes it very clear. It says, when you do so, it's to your advantage and to my advantage, so that our barns shall be filled with what? To such an extent that your presses will begin to burst out with new wine. And when others are saying there's a casting down, your case shall be different, because you'll be saying what? There is a lifting up. Please rise up and lift up your seed to the Lord. Lift up your seed to him and thank him, because he has enabled you to honor him today with your substance. Present your seed to the Lord by yourself and give him thanks in advance, because plenty financially is your portion. It's coming your way, beginning from this day forward in a new dimension. Magnify the name of the Lord and give him praise and glory. Father, we thank you. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. This seed in your hand today, as you give it according to his command, is declared blessed. And as you sow it, because you love him, plenty will answer in your life. Financially, from this day forward, your case shall be different. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Shout out louder, amen. Please be seated. Cast your seat with joy as the choir leads us in praise.
A clean heart, oh Lord, oh, and and renew right spirit within me. Create in me a clean heart, oh Lord, and renew right spirit within me. Yeah. Cast me not away from your presence, oh Lord. Take not your Holy Spirit from me. Restore unto me the joy of my salvation and renew right spirit within me. Create in me a clean heart, oh Lord, and renew right spirit within me. Oh, create in me a clean heart, oh Lord, oh, and renew right spirit within. Oh, cast me not away
Hallelujah. Let's lift our hands to heaven, everybody, and let's begin to give God thanks this evening, appreciating Him for seeing this last midweek service of this great year. Glorify His name. Thank Him for His mighty doings in our midst, in your life as an individual, in our midst as a church, for the answers to the prayers we have prayed from this platform. Lift up your voice and appreciate and glorify the name of the Most High God. He is worthy of all the praise and of all the glory. I thought you were giving Him thanks and glorifying His name. Lift up your voice to heaven and let God hear the voice of your appreciation tonight. Our Father, we have come tonight with gratitude for your mighty hand. We don't take your doings for granted. We celebrate you, we glorify you, we honor you. You are worthy of all the praise and of all the glory. Now begin to ask Him, Lord, I'm before you again tonight. Speak again into my life. Let your word come in my direction one more time tonight. Let your word transform me. Let your word change me. Let your word elevate me. Let your word cleanse me. Let your word build me up. Lift up your voice and speak to the Lord tonight. Lord, I'm before you again tonight for an encounter with your word. Speak directly to me again. By your word, let my life be transformed. Thank you, mighty God. In Jesus' precious name we have prayed. Our Father, we come before you tonight with gratitude in our heart for all that you have done and all that you are doing. We celebrate you and we glorify your holy name. Tonight, Lord, we are before you one more time for an encounter with you by your word. Let everyone experience a change of story tonight. Open up new chapters and new realms to our lives. We give you the praise and all the glory. In Jesus' precious name we have prayed. Somebody believe, say a loud amen. Give Jesus a big hand, and please, you may be seated in His presence. My case is different, and let the Redeemer of the Lord say, we have been looking in all of our midweek services in this great month at the subject, overcoming temptations. Overcoming temptations. We have come to realize all through the journey that we have been taking in God's word that by redemption we are called into an overcomer's world. 1 John chapter 5 and verse 4. Whatsoever is born of God overcometh the world, and this is the victory that overcomes the world, even our faith. So everyone that is born of God is born to overcome. We have also come to understand that no matter the temptation you are confronted with, there is always a way of escape. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13 says that there is no temptation that has taken you but such as is common to man. But God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted more than you are able. He said, and in every temptation, He makes a way of escape that you may be able to bear it. So there is nothing you are confronted with, nothing you are tempted with that has no way out. There is always a way out. And according to scriptures, we are made to understand that those who fall to temptation fall because of personal cooperation. In the big book of James chapter 1 verse 13 down to verse 15, the Bible says, let no man say when he's tempted that he's tempted of God, for God cannot tempt anyone with evil, neither can he be tempted with evil. He said, but every man is tempted when he's drawn away of his own lust and enticed. And when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin. And when sin has finished its work, it brings forth death. In other words, every temptation only takes hold of those who grant it permission. That is why the scripture makes it very clear to you and to me. We are not to give the devil any room. And what we are simply going through all through this month is to see what it takes to choke the tempter out of every department of our lives and take dominion in those areas in the name of Jesus Christ. No one shall be a victim in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. So we discover that sanctification remains a fundamental demand for the life of every believer. And that sanctification is what we are gaining knowledge on, knowing how to engage and take delivery of our sanctification. Remember, the scripture makes it clear that this is the will of God, even our sanctification. I see grace coming our way to be able to stand effectively in sanctification all the days of our lives in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. So the question therefore going through all through this month is simple. How do we overcome temptation? How do we overcome? How do we take dominion? How do we ensure and enforce liberty over temptation? And this night we're looking particularly at one very vital key, and that is by taking cover in the word daily. By taking cover in the word daily. The scripture makes it clear that sufficient for each day are the evils thereof. Therefore, there must be sufficient cover made available for each day if we are going to stand effectively. And we take cover, among other things, by the word of the Lord. The Bible says in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 26, it said that he may cleanse, that he may sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word of God. So the word of God is our platform for taking a spiritual shower. There is nothing any individual can do to maintain cleanliness without washing. In the same way, there is nothing any believer can do to maintain sanctification without revelation. The word of God remains man's cleansing agent, man's washing agent. And that is why it becomes critical for you and for me to maintain a healthy appetite for God's word. Now, what does God's word do that brings about our sanctification? We'll look at a few things quickly here from the word of the Lord. Number one, God's word convicts. God's word convicts. In Acts chapter 2 and verse 37, after Peter had concluded preaching, the Bible says, when they heard this, they were pricked in their heart. And they said unto Peter and the rest of the apostles, men and brethren, what shall we do? When they heard this, they were pricked, they were arrested, they were convicted. The word of God is what arrests the hearts of men. I love the testimony of one of us. He said he came to church, Shiloh 2015, and his wife had to persuade him from the drinking bar to come to church. And he came on the second day of Shiloh. And according to his testimony, he said, as I heard the word of God, I was arrested. God's word is a convictor. It arrests the heart of man. It points the man to the fact that he has missed his way. It is only God's word that can actually effectively convict the heart of a man. And that is what God's word does. It first plays the part of the convictor. Jesus, speaking in John chapter 6 and verse 63, said, it is the spirit that quickens. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. In other words, the words I speak, the words that come from me, the words that come from God, are the words that quicken the heart of man. They prick the heart of man. They arrest the heart of man. They point man to the fact that he's missing his way. Shout hallelujah. So God's word is a convictor. But number two, which is very important, is that God's word is a converter. It is one thing to be convicted, but conviction does not equal conversion. It is God's word that has the capacity not only to convict, but also to convert. You see, a man may speak to another and try to get him to feel bad about an issue. And that man may sincerely feel bad, but feeling bad does not equal making change. It is God's word that does not only make a man see his error, but also makes him turn from his evil way. The Bible says in the book of Psalm chapter 19, Psalm 19, beginning from verse 7 down to verse 9, it said, the law of the Lord is perfect. It is converting the soul.
The testimony of the Lord is sure. It makes wise the simple. He said, the statutes of the Lord are right, the rejoicing of the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. These are the characteristics of God's word. Not only does it arrest the heart, but it converts the heart. It changes the heart. It alters the heart. That is why the scripture said in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 18, it said, we all, beholding him as in a glass, we are changed into the same image. God's word is not only a convictor, but a changer. It alters the course of a man's life. It changes his characteristics. It gives him the character of Christ. It enables him to operate like Christ. Shout hallelujah. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 2, the Bible says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed. How will you do that? By the renewing of your mind. In other words, as long as new light keeps coming, new life will start coming. As long as new light keeps coming, new life will start coming. So it is the word of God that enlightens a man, converts the man, and makes that individual begin to live the life that God has ordained for him and for her. If you understand that, say loud amen. So God's word is a convictor, but God's word also is a converter. It changes. Number 3, God's word is a cleanser. It cleanses. In John chapter 15 and verse 3, the Bible says, now you are clean by the words which I have spoken unto you. It is a cleanser. It cleans a man's life. It takes out the stains in an individual's life. In the book of Psalm chapter 119 verse 9 down to verse 11, it said, wherewith shall a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed thereto according to thy word. And verse 11, it said, thy word have I hidden in my heart, that I may not sin against thee. So the word of God is a cleanser. It makes a man begin to live a stainless life. Not only does it change his character, but it cleanses him of his old lifestyle. The things that were staining and corrupting his lifestyle, God's word begins to cleanse it. It begins to shape him up. It begins to clean him up and make him look more like Christ. Shout hallelujah. In Ephesians chapter 5, the Bible says, verse 26 and verse 27, it said that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. And the result of it is that he may present unto himself a glorious church, not having any spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. Only God's word can make a man actualize stainlessness as a believer. It cleanses him. He said there will be no spot, no blemish, no wrinkle, not such thing is located around him. All of these by the instrument of God's word. So the word of God carries cleansing capacity. It carries cleansing capacity. It washes a man's life clean from everything that threatens to stain his Christianity. Shout hallelujah. So we have seen so far that God's word can convict, that is to arrest the heart of a man. God's word can convert, that is to change the life of a man. God's word can cleanse, that is to enable the man live a stainless life. But number 4, God's word sanctifies. God's word sanctifies. And sanctification is a step beyond the other 3. We see that conviction arrests, conversion changes, cleansing removes the stain, but sanctification separates. It is separation. John chapter 17 and verse 17, it says, sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. Sanctification is the force of God's word that separates